There comes a moment in life when you get tired of knocking on doors that never open, of leaving messages no one answers, and of waiting for hugs that never come. It's like shouting in an empty room, hoping someone will hear. But when that silence comes from a child, your soul trembles. They'll tell you it's normal, that they're busy, that they don't mean any harm. But you know the pain of feeling invisible to the ones you gave everything to. What no one tells you is that the more you beg for affection, the more it slips away. And sometimes, loving also means knowing when to walk away with dignity. Today, I want to speak to you with honesty, no sugarcoating, because it's time to stop begging for a love that should be free, not conditional. Throughout this video, you'll discover 5 keys that can help you reclaim your peace, your independence, and most importantly, your self-respect. And here's a hint: the final lesson might completely change the way you understand pain and love at this stage of life. I'm Gabriel, and if you've ever felt ignored by your own children, stay with me. This message is for you. Have you ever caught yourself justifying neglect with phrases like, "That's just how young people are," or "They're probably busy"? How many times have you swallowed a tear just to avoid seeming weak, just because your child didn't answer the message you sent 3 days ago? Listen closely. There comes a point when begging for affection becomes an act of betrayal against yourself, and that, my friend, hurts more than any silence. We've reached the first key point of this video. Recognize that love cannot be demanded or begged for. I know this is a hard truth to accept, especially when a child's love is at stake. But if you keep acting as if your worth depends on their attention, you're giving away the most sacred thing you have: your dignity. I know this because I've seen it in many, because hundreds of people in this community have written to me about it, and because, at one point, I lived it myself. There's a story I'll never forget. A woman wrote to me a few months ago from Colombia. Her name is Teresa. She's 71. She told me that every morning, for years, she has sent a good morning message to her 3 children. And she rarely gets a reply. Maybe a little emoji, a thanks mom, or a random word. But many times, nothing at all. The silent phone, the long wait, the emptiness that seeps through the cracks of the soul. What shook me most wasn't her story. It was what she confessed afterward. "I keep writing to them because I'm afraid that if one day I don't, they won't even realize I'm gone." That phrase pierced me like a dagger. And here lies the real problem. When love turns into a plea, it stops being love and becomes anxiety. It's not devotion. It's not patience. It's fear disguised as affection. And no one should live like that, least of all someone who has already given so much, who has spent a lifetime giving without asking for anything in return. Stoicism makes it very clear. Your peace depends only on you, not on how others respond to your gestures. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything that happens, happens as it should." But that doesn't mean resigning yourself to emotional mistreatment or abandonment. It means understanding that there are things beyond your control, like your children's behavior, but what is within your control is how you choose to respond to that abandonment. And begging is not a response worthy of someone who has lived so much. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine your heart as a house. For years, you kept the door wide open. You let your children come in, eat, sleep, and take whatever they needed. You never asked for keys. But now, when you knock on their door, sometimes they don't even answer. What do you do then? Stand in the rain? Keep knocking every day even though they barely remember what your voice sounds like? Or do you start tending to your own home? Putting flowers in the window, lighting the fireplace for yourself without waiting for them to come back? This chapter isn't an attack on children, it's a wake-up call for you. Because you weren't born to live at the mercy of whether someone loves you or not. You were born to live with strength, serenity, and a burning soul. And if someone, even your own child, can't recognize that, the problem isn't yours. It's theirs. Your job isn't to convince them to love you. It's to remember that true love doesn't need beggars. It needs whole adults who respect themselves enough not to plead for what should flow naturally. You've already done your part. Now it's up to you to decide whether you'll keep holding out your hand, waiting for crumbs, or whether you'll clench your fist, lift your head high, and walk toward a life where love starts with you. Because when you truly understand this, when you truly live it, you reclaim a power that not even the cruelest silence can ever take away. If the first step is to stop begging for what no longer comes, the next is to look inward and understand why we keep giving even when it drains us. We've now reached the second key point of this video. Free yourself from the role of the eternal provider. And no, this isn't just about money. It's about that identity many have carried for decades, believing their worth depends on how much they offer, how many problems they solve, how available they are even when no one asks. You've been told your whole life that giving is the right thing to do, that generosity is synonymous with love, that there's no greater pride than being the backbone, the support, the one who always endures. But there's a hidden trap in that idea, especially when you reach a certain age. Because if you continue to define yourself only by what you give, who are you when you no longer have as much to offer? If your identity is anchored to your usefulness, when your children no longer need you, you start to feel invisible. And that's not love. That's emotional dependence in disguise. Epictetus said it bluntly, "Do not value yourself by what you own or what you give, but by your ability to stand firm in the face of the inevitable." The inevitable passage of time, the inevitable distance from your children, the inevitable need to prioritize yourself. But many don't. They keep giving away their time, their money, their energy, thinking they are buying attention, gratitude, or companionship. And the price is steep. Emotional exhaustion, silent frustration, and a life revolving around others' needs while their own are forgotten. There are parents who have never learned to say no because they believe doing so makes them selfish. But real selfishness is abandoning yourself completely while hoping someone else will notice. And the harsh truth is that often that recognition never comes. Not because the children are cruel, but because they're used to receiving without questioning what's behind it. They're used to you being there. And without realizing it, you taught them that you would always be there, no matter the cost. The consequence of holding onto that role of eternal provider is devastating. You become a sort of shadow orbiting others, hoping they notice your presence. Instead of enjoying your later years with freedom, you chain yourself to commitments that no longer bring you joy. You wake up every day checking if someone needs something instead of asking yourself what you need. And little by little, life slips away in gestures no one values the way you hope they will. Let me tell you about what I saw at the home of a man named Stephen, 75 years old. He lives alone, but every month he sets aside part of his pension to help his children. Not because they can't manage, but because he feels that if he stops, they'll forget about him. He told me, without looking me in the eye, "I'd rather have nothing for myself if it means they'll call me, even if it's just to ask for something." That sentence holds such deep sadness that it still pains me to remember it. Do you see it? When your only role is to give, you stop being a person and become a service, and no one thanks a service. They use it, they take it for granted, and if it fails, they complain. But when you recognize yourself as valuable for who you are, not for what you give, everything changes. You start setting boundaries, saying no, saving your energy. And in that act of self-love, you are reborn. from a spiritual perspective, this is just as important. God didn't put you in this world to sacrifice yourself into oblivion. True sacrifice is not self-erasure. It's giving with awareness, with joy, while still protecting your dignity. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples, yes, but he never allowed himself to be manipulated. He served from love, not from fear, and you can do the same. So today, I want you to ask yourself, are you still giving because you truly want to, or because you're afraid you'll disappear if you stop? That question may shake you, but it can also set you free. Because when you understand that you don't need to stay stuck in that eternal role to be loved, you begin to build a new chapter where your value is not measured by what you give, but by who you are. And that, believe me, is the beginning of a life that's calmer, fairer, and most importantly, truly yours. We've already seen that love should never be begged for, and that the role of the eternal provider only leads to exhaustion. But there's an even more subtle trap that ensnares many parents, especially those who have already given so much. We've now arrived at the third key point of this video, and this is where true change begins. Accept emotional distance without guilt. This point isn't easy, because no one teaches you how to let go without resentment. Most people spend half their lives hoping their children will act like the best versions of themselves, and when that doesn't happen, instead of accepting it, they retreat into sadness or guilt. As if it were a personal failure, as if their worth depended on a bond that is no longer what it once was. Stoic philosophy is clear. Reality doesn't change just because you wish it would. It changes when you change the way you relate to it, and that means accepting that sometimes emotional distance cannot be avoided, that children make their choices, they move away, they live their own lives, and they don't always come back. It's not fair, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. And you weren't put in this world to carry guilt that doesn't belong to you. What others choose to do with the love you gave them does not define you. Epictetus would say that your task isn't to control anyone's heart, but to guard your own with firmness and compassion. How does this apply in practice? Learn to observe without judgment. Don't dramatize every silence. Leave space without turning it into abandonment. Because accepting distance doesn't mean giving up. It means facing reality without embellishments and still choosing to live with dignity. There's a strategy that can help. Every time you find yourself waiting for something from your children, a call, an invitation, a kind word, stop and breathe. Ask yourself, am I acting out of a desire to share or out of a need to fill a void? That difference changes everything. Because if you're relating from a place of emptiness, nothing will ever be enough. But if you act from a free desire to share, then every gesture is a blessing, not a debt. Let me tell you about Marta, a woman I met at a reflection workshop, 68 years old. Every time she feels one of her children pulling away, instead of insisting or complaining, she writes a letter. She doesn't send it. She just writes it. She pours everything she needs to express into it, and when she's finished, she gives thanks in silence for being able to feel, for not having turned to stone. She once told me, accepting that they're no longer like they used to be hurt me, but it set me free. Now I love them without chasing them. And finally, I'm at peace. That's the essence of this point. Stop chasing so you can start living. Because there's something deeply healing in letting go of the guilt over what you couldn't change. And if this message resonates with you, if you feel that you've lived that silence as a kind of sentence, I invite you to keep walking this path with us. Subscribe now and hit the like button, because this content could be the start of a change that brings back the serenity you deserve. Tell me in the comments what country you're watching from, and write an affirmation you want to claim as your own today. It can be something as simple as, I let go of guilt, or I deserve peace. because there are still lessons ahead that could shift the way you see this stage of life. And the final one, believe me, might just be the one that reconciles you completely with yourself. Let's keep going. Accepting emotional distance without guilt doesn't mean shutting down your heart. On the contrary, it means learning to feel without letting pain control you. But right there, as you start to reclaim your dignity, another trap can appear and ruin everything. Because even if you move away from the victim role, you can still fall into a mindset that quietly eats away at your freedom. Now, we come to the fourth key point of this video. Build a fulfilling life without waiting for recognition. This is one of the hardest lessons for someone who has spent decades giving, raising children, holding homes together, solving problems, and being the pillar of many generations. Because how do you learn to live without the approving gaze of those you gave everything for? The mistake is in believing that fulfillment must be validated by others. That if your children don't thank you, if no one acknowledges your efforts, then your life had no meaning. That idea is a slow poison, I'll tell you plainly, because it doesn't just steal your joy, it makes you a prisoner of the past. It forces you to replay everything you did, everything you gave, hoping that someday the words you long for will finally come. Thank you. And if they never come, you start believing that you failed somehow, that you did something wrong. But that's false, completely false. That mental trap settles in silently. It starts with a stray thought. Why don't they call? Maybe they don't appreciate me. What was the point of all that effort if now I'm alone? And each of those questions opens a wound fed by comparison, by idealized memories, by promises that were never fulfilled. Little by little, that expectation turns into an emotional addiction, an invisible dependence. And you, who could be spending your time growing, creating, living, end up stuck, waiting for gestures that aren't yours to control. Seneca warned clearly, whoever expects external rewards to justify their virtue is not yet free. Inner freedom, the kind that allows you to live peacefully, only comes when you realize that your worth cannot be measured by other people's responses. Because the world may never applaud you. Your children may never fully understand what you did for them. Your efforts may never make headlines, but that doesn't make them any less valuable. What is sacred is not always visible. And if you acted out of love, out of conviction, that alone is enough. That is your reward. You don't need anything else. The problem with living for recognition is that you place your happiness in someone else's hands. And there's nothing more fragile than that. If your children are attentive today, you're happy. If they forget you tomorrow, you fall apart. That's no way to live. That's no way to build peace. You have to plant your happiness in solid ground, in something that doesn't depend on other people's moods. How do you do that? By creating a life that fulfills you, even if no one celebrates it. By doing things that nourish you, that reconnect you with the part of yourself that was forgotten after so many years of serving others. I've met people who, after decades of waiting to be seen, finally chose to see themselves. They joined a pottery class, a book club, volunteered in their community, learned to play an instrument, wrote their memoirs. And most importantly, they stopped asking for permission to be happy. They didn't look for applause. They looked for truth. And in that simple decision, they found a freedom that no one could ever take away. You can do the same. You don't need your children's recognition to live a meaningful life. You don't need a phone call to know your story matters. Every day you get up and choose to live with intention, with faith, with hope, you are honoring your journey. And that is enough. If more comes, it will be a gift. But you no longer live begging for emotional crumbs. You live like someone who understands that fulfillment is not begged for. It is built, and it starts within you. We've reached the fifth key point of this video, and this is where many people break without even realizing it. Transform your pain into wisdom and legacy. Because if everything we've talked about so far has stirred something inside you, it's because deep down, you know you've carried more than you should have. You've waited too long. You've stayed silent when you should have spoken. And deep down, you've gotten used to a wound that never truly stops bleeding. Frustration has become a habit, emotional dependence, a way to survive, and the lack of respect from the very children who once slept on your chest has become a routine you've started to normalize. But what gets normalized doesn't heal, and what doesn't heal rots inside. Persisting in that pain without transforming it is like standing in front of a closed door, waiting for someone to open it, even though you know they're not coming back. That waiting doesn't honor you. It destroys you. Every day you spend replaying what you did for them, wondering where you went wrong, silently begging for a sign, is time lost. Time you could be using to build something different, something that's yours. But let me be clear, I'm not saying the pain magically disappears. No, pain doesn't vanish, but it can be transformed. And that's what makes the difference between those who end their lives full of resentment and those who, even after being abandoned, keep walking with their soul held high. You don't have to turn into a cold statue to move forward. You can feel and still choose. That's the key, choosing what you'll do with that pain. You can use it as an excuse to shut yourself off, or you can use it as a fire to light your way. And no, it's not easy. But it is possible. I've seen it. I've met mothers and fathers who stopped waiting for emotional justice and started planting legacy. Not so their children would recognize them, but because they realized they still had something precious to offer the world. They started writing, teaching, helping others, creating. And in doing so, they stopped being victims and became living witnesses to an inner transformation that only comes from pain that's been worked through. You can do the same, but you have to stop justifying the unjustifiable. Stop protecting those who no longer protect you and start protecting yourself. Maybe that means speaking uncomfortable truths. Maybe it means staying silent where you once begged for attention. Maybe it's simply living your life without offering any more explanations. What matters is that you make the decision to break the cycle where suffering is recycled but never released. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters." Are you willing to let that wound become light? Because if you are, you won't just reclaim your dignity, you'll also set a powerful example for those around you. And even if your children don't see it today, one day they'll understand that your greatest legacy wasn't everything you gave to them, but the way you stood back up without them. That, more than any inheritance, is the deepest gift you can leave behind. Because true respect isn't demanded, it's embodied, and it begins when you transform your pain into wisdom and your silence into steady, unshakable presence. Here, now, with yourself, even if no one else ever acknowledges it. If you've made it this far, it's no accident. Very few people have the courage to listen to a message like this all the way to the end. Most prefer to live in the comfort of their excuses, justifying the unjustifiable, waiting for affection to come like a miracle while continuing to sacrifice their dignity. But not you. You've had the courage to face an uncomfortable truth, that begging for love only deepens the pain, and that respect not demanded is respect lost. Today, I spoke to you without sugarcoating, without easy comforts, because the stage you are living deserves more than superficial sweetness. It deserves depth, determination, and a transformation that depends on no one but yourself. I say this with respect, but also with firmness. You are standing before a choice. You can keep waiting to be valued, or you can start valuing yourself. You can keep holding out your hand, or you can learn to close it tightly and stand on your own. It's not an easy choice, but it's the one that can change everything. And if you feel that this video has stirred something inside you, I want you to confirm it in the comments by writing your country and the phrase, "I choose to live with dignity." That's your way of saying, I'm awake, I'm here, and I'm not going to keep walking with my head down. I'm Gabriel, and this is The Stoic Garden. We're not here to console anyone, we're here to awaken. This channel exists because too many have stayed silent, have given too much, and have waited too long. And it's time to start living from a different place. If you want to keep receiving these reflections that don't sugarcoat, but truly heal, subscribe now. Join this community of people who have decided to take control of their lives, no matter their age, their past, or who abandoned them. Share this video with someone you know needs to hear this, even if they don't realize it yet. Sometimes a single phrase can shake an entire life. And don't leave just yet. Right here, 2 more videos will appear that can help you keep digging deeper into this path of freedom, inner strength, and personal rebirth. Because the conversation doesn't end here. It's just beginning. I'll see you there. And until then, remember, the love you don't beg for is the only love that truly sets you free.